Recently, a debate has erupted online over whether movies really need to have sex scenes in them. I'm of the opinion that they most certainly don't, and I think they're never necessary for the plot. But it seems like these days, especially when you watch a show or a movie on a streaming service, it's almost unavoidable. And recently, Victoria Justice did an interview about this movie she's filming right now called, ironically, Depravity. And she did her first ever sex scene on day one of filming it. She said, I'm like, really guys, we're gonna schedule this for the first day? Cool, thanks for that. It's uncomfortable. I was actually very nervous about it and totally anxious about the entire situation. And I was like, did I make the wrong choice? I don't know if I should do this. There's a bunch of random dudes in the room breathing and watching you. The actor I was working with, we were friends as much as we could be. We barely knew each other because it was the first day of filming. He was a super nice guy and made me feel safe and was very polite and respectful. When she's saying, I was asking myself, should I do this? Am I making the wrong choice? That is what your conscience sounds like when you're about to do something that you know you shouldn't do.
It's very
which
rude
means
of all
you should
those,
leave.
It's very rude of all those random dudes to be in the room breathing.
I know
They shouldn't be breathing. They should be holding their breath.
By the way, those are people most of the time that have actual jobs to do, at least somewhere on set. So they weren't random dudes. The studio wasn't like, hey, you!
Just bringing in a studio audience for fun.
Do you want to come over? What I find interesting is that the first day of shooting is never easy, right? So I like it when they get caught up doing like if you're working in network television and you're a guest star, you're only doing 7-8 days with these actors who are regulars. You get called in to do an emotional scene and it'll be like the first day of filming and suddenly you have to cry on set. That is also equally as difficult, just probably not something your conscience is telling you is a bad thing. It also reminded me of that Heather Graham article I was reading this week where she talked about how when she was growing up, she grew up in a conservative household. Her dad was an FBI agent. Her mom was more artsy. And she wanted to be in, like, she was offered a role in the Heathers. And her dad said, you know, if you want to live in this house, you can't do that.
I don't even know what the Heathers is.
It was
what on earth would be in Heathers that is off limits, though?
I don't.
Because there was no sexual content.
If the guy's very conservative, I don't know, but he says no to being in that. And then later, when she talks about when she started working in Hollywood after she moves out of her family's home, she talks about how a lot of the roles seem to be boiling down to sexism. I'm like, well, your dad told you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Should have listened.
But you didn't listen, and now she blames society for what her father told her was wrong all along.
Ooh, I have so many thoughts on this, but I can't. Man, don't get me
No,
started.
just go for it. Go for it. Sound off.
Oh boy. Look. Oh boy. How can I'm. There's no way for me to broach this topic without sounding like sexist, if not misogynistic.
Go for it. We do that all the time.
Yeah. I'll put in summary. Generally speaking. In the absence of proper male guidance, women make a lot of terrible decisions.
Yes.
Like, en masse.
Yes.
And also women generally just have a massive problem with accountability. It's never their fault. It's always someone else's, usually a man somewhere. Maybe the men breathing in the room in this case. But this is actually just this little excerpt is quite interesting to read because of like what you said, right, about your conscience. It's like she's clearly doing something that she it's acting, quote unquote, but you know, she herself, I don't know her beliefs, background, anything. I know nothing about this woman, but she herself obviously clearly knows there's something here that's I'm not really comfortable with this or whatever. But it's like, well, you know, and you do have the option to say no, because these type of situations exist and people will always frame it as if like, oh, she had to do it. Or she was like, no, she was paid probably a lot of money to do this and made this choice, made these decisions. Even these girls who do like OnlyFans, prostitution, whatever they're getting into, it's never their fault. They were failed by society. Somehow men are the problem. It's the culture. It's this, it's that. And there's just this massive absence of accountability. And yeah, fathers, it's important.
Well,
listen to your father. Listen to your dad.
You
He's
say, like,
wiser than you think.
women have this problem with taking accountability for their actions, but
dude.
at the same time, you've stated here that women, in the absence of proper male guidance, will make bad decisions, which
Terrible
means
decisions.
That probably means they have limited accountability for their actions. That probably means they have limited agency compared to men, right?
Well,
That's my theory, at least.
Well, it depends on what narrative we're going with. Are we in
I'm going with reality.
the feminist, egalitarian,
No.
women are totally equal to men?
I'm going with reality. Women,
Okay.
in my opinion, I
Okay.
would say, in the absence of male guidance, women make bad decisions. That would lead me to believe that women have limited agency in these situations.
When you say agency, what do you mean?
The ability to rationally make decisions for oneself.
You mean like biologically, mentally? Is that what you mean? I'm just
yeah.
trying to understand. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, those two things really like can't coexist. Total accountability and empowerment and needing male guidance to make proper decisions.
The interesting discussion here would be like, well, how many days on set would it require for the dudes breathing in the background to be less awkward?
Thank you.
Right? Like, okay, so she says dudes, meaning she doesn't know who they are. She met the co-star, but she said that he seemed polite enough anyways and made her feel very comfortable. So that theoretically shouldn't change. I guess it could get even easier. But the nameless, faceless people in the background, your the dude operating the boom mic, people doing camera operation, your producers in the background on their cell phone, like those people aren't going to become less known to you, aren't going to become more known to you as this goes on. So like, is the idea that if we were 15 days in, this would be less awkward? Maybe that's what she's saying. Could it be something that in her contract she could have written up like, I won't do, because a lot of this, it does come down to logistics.
Look, the reality
process of filmmaking it's a guerrilla warfare experience of getting everything done in a hyper logistic focus. So to do that, she would have to put it in her contract. I refuse to do it at this point in the show. But then you're not going to get the job.
I don't think there is any contract negotiation or arbitrary amount of days that could have passed to make this feel okay for her. Because regardless of how seasoned you are as an actor, it feels unnatural and wrong, morally wrong, to simulate sexual acts on camera or just perform real sex acts on camera, because people instinctually know that that is wrong. And I tweeted about this and I said no more sex scenes, because obviously the actors hate doing them. They need intimacy coordinators on set to make sure they don't get a lawsuit. And the audiences are not clamoring for them. We don't feel comfortable watching these things anyway.
She didn't mention. She didn't mention an intimacy coordinator, which is what they always
almost
talk.
certainly
they
had one.
usually mention an intimacy coordinator.
Intimacy coordinator, what a job.
That's their job.
They almost
right?
certainly had one, even if she didn't mention it, because they need HR reps on site to make sure no one gets in trouble for putting their hand in the wrong place. But those people, they have jobs because actors are uncomfortable simulating sex on camera, as they should. You should follow that feeling and decide, I'm not going to do this.
Did you see
Just draw the line.
Did you see the name of the movie though?
Yes. Depravity.
It's about a serial killer, right?
It's a crime.
It's about a serial killer. All right. I was gonna say, I'm like,
it's not just a porno, but what, like, the line is blurring now between what is a
Look,
mainstream
back in the day,
movie and a porn movie.
True Detective just hired adult film stars to be in their movies to do those types of scenes because they're like, look, I'm a pro at this. I can take my clothes off anytime. Perhaps if the moral argument is that they know it's wrong, those actors of that profession have had more time to dull themselves to whatever they have a problem
with. Let's not
with
even moralize it. It's your gut feeling. Follow your gut feeling that's telling you you're making the wrong choice.
It's interesting.
That's enough. You don't need, a religious argument behind it. You're just going with your gut. And her gut in that moment was telling her, get out of this situation. And she didn't follow it because she decided there is a number on a sheet. You name the price, and at this price, I am comfortable with doing this thing that goes against my conscience.
Yeah, people need to be careful with that, man. Honestly, people really need to think about what their price is and if they have one.
Well, they say everyone has one.
I see a strong disconnect.
Some people,
here.
it's death, and it should be.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. No, I genuinely think about this stuff.
Yes.
Like with my, in the last 5 years in particular, growing my audience, and I don't like to say fame because it's a weird word, but it's what it is. Fame, wealth, notoriety, all of that stuff is over the course of time, like I'm not at the, nowhere near the top echelons of, fame and celebrity and all of that. But as it grows and your life changes and you see, you get a closer look on how people fall into certain things, right? Whether it's in the music industry or it's in entertainment or Hollywood or even politics or this or that, or even just social media and so on. You can really see the traps and the pitfalls in some of them up close. And I think it's important for people, especially people in that type of world, but I'd say individuals in general, just to think of like, okay, like truly on a deep level, like what are your principles and your values, and what are the things you can and can't compromise on, right? Because if there's an amount of money that someone can pay you to do something that goes against like your deeply held morals, values, or beliefs, that like there should be some things that no matter how much money someone offered you, you'd be like, no, absolutely not. It doesn't matter. You could give me $1 billion. I will not do that thing. And people need to think about where those lines are for themselves. Because if you don't think about it ahead of time, people like over time, they're just like slip into this, slip into that. Like, oh, well, I was offered this much to promote that or to do that, or
if you're in an industry like Hollywood, you are already primed for this moment for a long time beforehand. And I mean, think about why women slept with Harvey Weinstein.
Oh gosh.
Right?
Tip of the iceberg.
Like that's just, that is just the tip of the iceberg. What we were let know, like as the public, but I'm sure it's still going on. We just don't know who the other Harvey Weinsteins are. And you are primed in that industry and other industries too, like politics too, to compromise on not just your moral values, because a lot of people don't have those, at least not explicitly, but your gut instincts.
I want to address a little bit more about what they're talking about, the decline here. So it says a new report suggests that the fact that the Hollywood sex scene is declining fast. There is almost 40% less sexual content in major films than there was at the start of the millennium. Commissioned by the Economist, I apologize, for data analyst Stephen Follows, the report assembled data on the 250 highest grossing films each year since the year 2000 and found that films released in 2023 had just over 60% of the erotic content found in the top 250. Broken down by genre, the decline was steepest in action movies, a drop of approximately 70%. That's because there can be no sex appeal to action movies anymore, ever, at all. The other thing that's important here, it says, while romantic films recorded much less change with a drop of just under 20%. Here's the thing. As budgets expand, movies aren't getting R ratings like they used to. They're making PG-13 safe Marvel movies, big budgets that want to draw the largest audience possible. Therefore, there's going to be 100 Captain Americas and just a few Saltburns.
Sure.
That's why.
Saltburn was made for streaming, right? It was made for Amazon Prime and produced by Amazon Prime. That's why.
It went to theaters.
Briefly.
Yes.
But that's... Yeah, it says movies with no sexual content have increased from 20% per year to 50% since 2000.
I'm surprised it was ever the case where 80% of movies had sexual content. That sounds,
whether
high.
They're talking like
just
people,
nudity.
80%.
I don't know if they're talking just nudity, or is it a Hollywood sex scene where they're under the covers and the covers are rustling around them, and everyone's like, that looks uncomfortable. The point is, like, what do they describe as sexual content? Yeah. But we talk all the time. Like, look, we went and watched Fall Guy yesterday, which go and see it, by the way, it's fantastic. And I was just happy to see a movie where a couple was actually like ended up together. Okay,
the guy gets the girl,
and a movie where the girl isn't cold, distant, and rude, and the guy's simpish and lame. It's a movie where there's an actual couple and they want to be together. You don't see a whole lot of that anymore, and in action movies especially, the woman can't be attracted to men. She has to be annoyed by the mere sight of men when she sees them. And the action hero, the guy, this is why I think that what they're doing with movies like this, it's a hack. Yeah. So they make it a action romantic comedy because a pure action movie isn't allowed to have a damsel in distress anymore. You can't. It's sexist to do that. It takes away her agency, as you said earlier. So making an action romantic comedy that equals out both the male and the female star allows there to be romance without people saying she's just being used for her looks and her appearance. She doesn't have as important of a role.
She's a manic pixie dream girl.
Yeah. So they've actually found a workaround. I don't even know if it was conscious, but they found an unconscious workaround to the
Sure.
fact that you're not allowed to have the pure action movie anymore where the guy gets the girl.
Well, that kind of movies is going in theaters, and I think to make sense of this decrease in sex scenes and nudity, obviously the culture has not gotten any less sexually degenerate since 2000. It has gotten much worse. I think the reason for that is because you're going to find all of the softcore and sometimes hardcore pornography on streaming services. If you watch any streaming show or any streaming movie these days, it's usually porn in the first episode. That's how they think they can get your attention
I think
and
it's
keep
just,
you.
it's too, well, it's also to hook the studio. The studio mandates it and
They
wants
do.
it there right away.
Yeah.
Because they think that that's going to sell people on
It's
it.
like OD, and this is why I steer clear of most of the new shows on streaming now, because it all is just aggressively in your face from the very first episode and very first scene sometimes. And I'm not interested. I'm not interested in the story anymore if that's the trade-off I have to make.
Good for you.
And they also, like, I saw people arguing against my point, saying, well, sex is a natural part of the real world and our life experiences. Therefore, it should be reflected back at us in the entertainment that we watch. But, you know, you don't see people on shows taking a shit.
I was about to say.
Like, so what's that about?
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's realistic. Should we see that? I don't get it. That's just a totally moot point, and I think it's coming from people
brain.
who are porn-brained and desensitized to the point where they don't even realize it's being shoved in their face this much.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.